The Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning International presents this luncheon lecture. Today's topic, taking care of yourself, getting the stress out. Your presenter, Rebecca Kirby, MD, MSRD.
I would say by the turnout that there's some stress out there in this world. Can y'all hear me in the back? Okay, I usually project pretty well. It's a family trait. You can stand across the room from a cell phone and any of my family members are talking. Now, we're going to talk about today getting the stress out. But one of the first things we're going to talk about is what the heck is going on with stress. Now, do you suffer from headaches, indigestion, dry mouth, nausea, diarrhea, general aches and pains, increase or decrease in appetite, problems sleeping, racing heart, cold and sweaty palms, exhaustion, never feeling rested, weight loss or weight gain, sexual difficulties, feeling out of it, clenched teeth, clenched jaw, grinding teeth? Has anybody ever experienced any of these on an ongoing basis? Okay. Well, these are some of the physical symptoms of stress. And what happens is chronic stress will wear us down. We have a normal physical response to stress, which is very important. And we're going to talk about that because that's what has saved mankind all these years. The problem is we've changed our way of being exposed to stress. And now we're kind of exposed to it all the time. Well, stress is kind of that word that's just out there. We think of it in terms of sort of an intangible thing, stress. But what is it? Actually, it's an engineering term that has to do with bending things, pounds per square inch. So when we talk about stress, we're also talking about changes, where it's a force that causes physiological changes. And what that happens is it starts a cascade of adaptive responses and adaptive changes. So the stress response helps us. It got started with our ancestors way back in the cave. And when they had to go into their cave and accidentally encounter like a bear or a saber-toothed tiger, they evolved, those who survived developed a really good stress response. It helped them to escape from danger. It helped them to be more focused. And this is true of the stress response. It helps them to be prepared. But the point is when the stress is over, the body seeks to go back to the normal state we call homeostasis, back to a normal state. Okay, well, what are our sources of stress? There are many. There's internal and external. You may be kind of interested of some of the things that we consider stress. I mean, physical stress, wrong temperatures, either too hot or too cold. The stress of menopause, that's a stress. Exercise, too much exercise is a physical stress. There's biochemical stress, deficiencies of vitamins and minerals, amino acids and proteins, fatty acids, food allergies, errors in your metabolism, addictions. There's toxic stress, environmental toxins such as pesticides, cleaning solvents, as well as the use of chemicals like caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, and drugs. There's mental stress, which is what we most often think about. That's high, anything, high responsibilities, issues with relationships, career problems, long working hours and difficult mental tasks, anxiety and worry. Emotional stressors, attitude towards yourself and towards others and how you respond to stress. Bereavement, that's a stress. So there's lots of things. In life events, there is a whole test of life event stressors that you can take. Things like moving, death in the family, divorce. I mean, there's a whole list of them, and actually it's on the very back page of your questionnaire. And that's just the tip of the iceberg on things like life stressors. And one of the things that we're going to talk about that's really important in getting to the point where you can help with your stress is you need to recognize what is your negative stress. Well, one of the things that we always think about in terms of our lifestyle is, do we have stressors on the job? And there's also a handout in here on burnout. And I looked on the internet, and one of the things that they talked about was the 10 most stressful jobs. But depending on the internet site, I got different top 10 lists. So this is the list I was going with because it came off the CDC, which is our website for our government in Atlanta, Centers for Disease Control. Okay, so they're at the top. I don't think I have any argument about that. The inner city high school teacher, and even the apple over there is sweating. The police officer, a miner, air traffic controller, medical intern, been there, stockbroker, journalist, customer service worker. Whoa, that must be a stressful one. Secretary, waiter, and you probably have your own top 10, or your own profession in there somewhere. Okay, but remember, not all stress is bad. There's good stress and there's bad stress. It's kind of hard to think that, actually stress might be good for us. But stress can help with creativity. Stress is very good for performance. Athletes use it to help with motivation, focus, reaction time. And then stress is good for that real danger. Whether it was the saber-toothed tiger that the ancestor was scrambling to get out of the cave with, or it's when that 18-wheeler pulls in front of you on the interstate. But there's a difference between the thrills and the overwhelming anxiety. And it becomes bad stress when it's not resolving. There's no relaxation of the body's systems to get back to that homeostasis. And anxiety and worry keep those hormones just cruising and washing through the body. So you might want to say, what is our response to stress? Well, it depends. We have that acute short-term stress where, we successfully get out of the way of the 18-wheeler. The ancestor got the heck out of the cave and survived one more day. And then you have the chronic long-term stress. Now, the immediate stress reaction is what all gets it going. And this may sound familiar to you. It's called fight or flight. And y'all may remember from Biology 101, fight or flight. Well, what happens is the brain automatically starts a whole cascade of reactions. When the autonomic nervous system is triggered, there's effects on the muscles, the bloodstream, the skin. And the important thing is the autonomic nervous system, ANS for short, has two systems. That's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Now, the sympathetic is the fight or flight, trying to get out of the way of the tiger. And as we talk about what the brain has turned on, think about all these physiological reactions. Are you still having them on a chronic basis? Our ancestor got out of the way of the tiger, and then homeostasis was achieved. But we are constantly bombarded with stress, and sometimes those mechanisms of getting back into balance don't get there. So fight or flight, that tenses our muscles, ready for quick action, increases the heart rate, increases your blood pressure. Our arteries constrict. Digestion slows down so that the blood that we would be using for digestion is there available for our muscles to run, so we can run faster. So you may have experienced, like when you're tense, nausea or just kind of a queasy stomach. Blood flow is actually increasing up to maybe 300 to 400%. Breathing gets faster, trying to get more oxygen to the muscles. Perspiration increases to cool the body, the cold, clammy hands, and actually you constrict blood away from the skin. Again, it needs to go to the muscles. So you may feel pale. And perspiration increases to cool the body. And then some biochemical things, sugars and fats are pouring into the bloodstream for quick fuel. Those muscles have got to get going. And another one that's interesting and harmful for us in prolonged stress is that chemicals are released to aid blood clotting. If you're about to be chomped down on by the saber-toothed tiger, it would be good if you clotted really quickly. But if you're enduring, constant stress, having a little sticky blood may promote more clotting. So now, we said there was another system. It's called the rest and digest system, the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so what it does is it helps moderate the sympathetic nervous system. So your heart rate and your breathing slow, your stomach and gastrointestinal activity get back online and for proper digestion. And then you replenish your energy. Now, the bottom line is the caveat here. Can be activated through relaxation techniques. So you can help your body get out of sympathetic fight or flight mode and into the rest and digest mode, get back to homeostasis. And the little hint down there is a lavender. Lavender is actually one of those herbs that's been shown to help promote relaxation. Okay, now, the stress circuit. This is, we talked about the brain, getting all those systems going. Well, this is how it does it. It does it through the HPA system. That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Well, why is that important? That is because there's a feedback mechanism that goes from the brain, which has just, seen the tiger or the 18-wheeler, communicating to the pituitary through a number of hormones which end up telling the adrenal glands to do something, and then the adrenal glands secrete their hormone, and it feeds back to the brain that, okay, we've got enough hormone on board, time to shut down. So it's a feedback mechanism when it's working. Okay, this is called the HPA, the hypothalamic. The hypothalamus in the brain is just a little bitty 4-gram weighted area in your brain. The pituitary is a little gland, hangs from the brain, and the adrenal are these little glands that sit on top of the kidneys. And it triggers this little loop that I was telling you about. It triggers all those like adrenaline hormones, which we call epinephrine, and it also triggers norepinephrine, helps you to get away from the tiger, and it's going to make those adrenal glands secrete the cortisol. Now, one of the things that we didn't talk about when we had all that fight or flight going on, those were physiological things that helped us bolt away from the tiger. There's some other things going on. That's why stress can really work with your mind. All these stress hormones that are in neurotransmitters that are being released can also suppress short-term memory, inhibition, and rational thought. Because when you were being stressed to make a real quick run for it, you didn't need to remember what you had walked into the cave to do in the first place. Or that maybe you dropped your little skin costume, or that you had to really think about, okay, now, do I need to run to the right or to the left? You bolted. Okay, so this is being interfered with by all these stress releasing hormones. And also, this is very important, it stores emotionally loaded experiences in long-term memory. And that was okay for the ancestor because they got some feedback, they remembered what was the good things to run from. But it's it's not so good for us in the long term. This is what people who have post-traumatic stress disorder are suffering from. They're hardwired now with some really long-term memory experiences. So again, here's our brain and all those interesting things going on. The feedback loop is important because when this ferocious interaction between the parts of the brain and the adrenal system starts going, the buck stops at those adrenal glands sitting right there on top of the kidneys. And what they secrete is cortisol. So that's really our primary stress hormone. So that's been released. Okay, so what's it doing? It's stimulating the synthesis of glucose. It increases fatty acids and proteins. And it has immunosuppressive properties and anti-inflammatory properties. I mean, you're going to control your immune response while you're fleeing. And it plays a role in fear and anxiety reactions. It's one of those things where a little bit is a good thing, but too much or too little is not. So as this axis in the brain is communicating with the adrenal glands, there's also some other parts of the brain that are being affected. And under stress, these parts of the area, they're the limbic system and this little thing called the amygdala and what we call the hippocampus, they affect motivation, memory, and mood. So there's a lot going on, not only just with the muscles ready to go, but there's a lot of things going on, changes in the brain. And interestingly enough, the research over the years that's been studying the effects of stress has seen that stress will switch off hormonal systems. And they have seen that with growth. Both in animals and in human situations, old research where they've seen severe emotional deprivation, that's resulted in short stature. So their growth hormones were cut off. Reproduction, we find now in extreme athletes that women will quit ovulating. Because exercise is one of those things you can use for stress reduction, but you can do too much. And then the other hormonal systems, like your metabolism and immunity. And immunity is a big deal. So, how do we get out of this ferocious loop here of too much stress hormones cruising around? Well, we have built in, because our body always wants to get back to homeostasis, relaxation response after stress. It's that part of that adaptive change of getting back to homeostasis. We have that negative feedback loop that down regulates. Okay, this is the key. What happens if it doesn't get down regulated? You know, you're keeping high levels of cortisol cruising through the system. That's one effect, physiological effect that keeps on going. Another one is that it becomes desensitized and it is not getting enough cortisol. Remember, cortisol is one of those things, too much or too little is not a good thing. And then the other thing they've found is just the system is so overloaded it just fails to respond. So all of these things can go on. What it essentially means that our fight or flight mechanisms are all working overtime, and they begin to cope by shutting down. And it takes quite a toll on the body. So as we said, too much cortisol is too much of a good thing. So think about these things that you may not have ordinarily associated with stress. Hyperglycemia, that's too much sugar in your blood. Increased insulin, which is in response to the hyperglycemia. And then you get insulin resistance, you store excess fat, and you gain weight. So obesity. And obesity very often means type 2 diabetes down the road. And then inflammation. Too much insulin is promoting also hypertension and disordered blood lipids. That's what we mean by cholesterol LDL cholesterol in promoting atherosclerosis. Now, they've shown in animals and people, as you could well imagine, that too much stress increases blood pressure. And they've even seen it in animals, like in I can't try to remember what kind of monkey, but one of those colonies where if the aggressive dominant male was constantly being challenged, he got hypertension. So it's something that's been going on for quite a long time, and we see that also. They looked at a survey of working men, and those who rated highest on the stress index questionnaire also had the highest blood pressure. So all these things are going on. Now, this is sort of discouraging. Prolonged chronic stress can actually sort of atrophy, which means sort of deteriorate certain cells in the body and in the brain. And what happens is our ability to track and remember information, names and places, there are certain areas of the brain that help with that. We begin to lose that ability. We've talked about how it impairs the immune system. And another effect that's found is the immune system becomes hyperactive and hypervigilant. And we see this in autoimmune disorders, what we call inflammatory cytokines that are there to fight inflammation. They become hyperactive. And these autoimmune responses are no longer contained. Remember, the body has sort of exhausted itself with this constant level of stress. Things like arthritis and autoimmune diseases get worse. You get chronic fatigue. Now, I do want to mention this fellow named Hans Selye, because he's considered the father of stress research. And I found during one of our book sales in the library a nice one of his many books on the stress of life. He even kind of came up with the term stress, although it was around in other circles. And what he developed many years ago is still understood today, and we've actually been able to refine and go beyond what he originally came up with. But he calls something the general adaptive syndrome, which is GAS for short. It really means excessive stress causes burnout. And the first thing that happens is the alarm reaction, where the adrenals are dumping all their cortisol and hormones into the bloodstream. Then you get the stage of resistance, where you're dealing with stress. Okay, and the adrenal glands are having to overwork to secrete all these high levels of cortisol. And then they just poop out. You have the stage of exhaustion, where the adrenals shrink, cortisol falls, and you're not able to respond to stress. So, our behavior can hurt us. I mean, we have good stressors and bad stressors, but we're going to talk a little bit now about the negative stressors and what sort of things we can kind of do to help our body handle what it wants to do, which is get back to homeostasis. Now, this is pretty interesting. 43% of adults suffer from adverse health effects from stress. You know, all those things we've just listed, whether it's memory or diabetes. This is probably a conservative estimate, would be my guess. 75 to 90% of the visits to doctors are for stress-related ailments or complications. Lifetime prevalence of an emotional disorder is 50% due to untreated stress reactions. And stress is negative stress, prolonged stress, chronic stress is linked to 6 of the 10 leading causes of death: heart disease, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, suicide, and liver cirrhosis. Even our government, OSHA, is declared a hazard, stress a hazard in the workplace, and costing the industry worldwide, and in the United States in particular, $300 billion a year. So it's no small potatoes. Okay. This is one of my favorite things I've found. Handle stress. Okay, so what we want to do is protect ourselves, get our body back into equilibrium. So there's a couple of ways that you really need to approach it. One is you're going to have to manage stress because it's not going away and we actually need some. And then learning to de-stress. Both of those are very helpful in getting the body back into the equilibrium it desires. Now, I put individuality down here because it really, we're all very different in how we respond to stress. And you've probably noticed that, among family and friends. Some people are much more freaked out than others. Some people tend to get sick more quickly than others under stress. Well, we really are different in how we respond to stress. It can be our biochemical individuality, how all those hormones are interacting in our body, and we may have inherited some of those characteristics. Of course, it can be exacerbated by poor nutrition. And the really biggie also is past experiences. They really modulate how you react. You have, of course, the extreme, which is your folks with the post-traumatic stress disorder, but we've all had experiences somewhere along the way that have incited the stress reaction. And then how we continue to react to those situations will make a difference in how our body responds to that stress. So we have to learn how to handle it. Now, in handling stress, one of the first things you need to do is figure out what it is. Now that may, seem kind of like, well, of course, I know what my stress is. It's my, X, Y, and Z. However, it may be a little more subtle than your, relationships at home or at work. But, really get down and think about what are your negative stressors. Because, to attack a problem, you have to know what you're attacking first. Also, give yourself permission to improve your quality of life. This whole lecture is about, self-care. We want to get away from being constantly bombarded by chronic stress and then letting our body just go off the charts with its hormone productions and other alterations in our physiology and our brain. So you're going to have to actually take an effort and take some time to deal with what it is that you find is a negative stress in your life. And I think listing personal reasons to undertake stress management is a real good technique. We use it in folks who are trying to give up smoking. They write their motivations down on a card that they carry with them, and they're very personal. Everybody has, these are motivations that are important to you. They're not supposed to be important to anybody else, just you. And then when you're kind of needing a little reminder that you have to take time for yourself, whip your card out and see what those personal reasons are that you've decided to really get a handle on stress management. Also, be patient. Recognize that habits are hard to break. They take time. And you're also going to be building new habits, and they take time. Okay. Here's our atlas trying to struggle with the clock here. Because one of the things that, hits us most just right up front is time management. Because things have just changed so much. My gosh, we've got, used to, back in the old days, somebody phoned you. There was no answering machine, so you had no messages. You just weren't there. They had to phone back. Now you have, answering machines. You have the, call waiting. That's practically a thing of the past. You got the cell phones that are constantly going off in all situations. People seem to feel like they need to be plugged in 24/7. You have your email accounts, telling you to pay attention, answer. Not, and of course, you got postal mail. So you're just barraged. There's a long list of things to do and commitments to your time. One of the things way back before there were cell phones, I was trying to manage my time better, and I read this really good book called Putting More Time in Your Life. And I was just dealing with mail clutter then, and geez, I didn't know that it was going to get exponentially worse. But one of the things she talks about is only handling your mail once. Because I see lots of folks who go through their mail and they don't make decisions about what needs to go in the trash, what actually needs to be read, and they sort of make it that tentative pile that they'll go through again, maybe, and again, and again, and again. So you've just wasted tons of time. So sit there next to your trash bin and really make a decision. You know, file trash, handle it once. And you can say that about your messages, too. Like email messages, you've got a message that you kind of want to respond to, but maybe not right now. Well, then it's going to clutter up your email inbox. You know, why not do it? Then the big thing, you know, say no to all those overcommitments. You want to be a team player. You want to be well respected, but sometimes you just got to say, I'm doing about all I can. So take a stand against overscheduling, and don't try to do everything. You know, delegate, and don't try to be responsible for everybody's behavior. You're only responsible for your own. Make a to-do list. Very early, basic thing in time management. If you're a worrier type, you kind of keep a running list going on in your brain of all the things you have to do. That just kind of keeps things stirred up. Sit down and make that list out. And very often, there's not nearly as much to do as you thought. Once it's down on a list, and then it's much more manageable, and you get to cross it off. And last but not least, schedule time for yourself. And this is where you have to remind yourself that self-care is important, and you have to do something that you enjoy every day. Okay, now another thing to talk about is we're going to try to manage our time. We need to manage our attitude as well. It's interesting how you react to something. Not only is there some hardwiring due to past experiences, but you can change a lot of that. You can be much more, the glass is half full. And you can actually rewire in your brain by being a much more positive person, and that positivity actually is very healing. So you want to fight trying to be a perfectionist, because you'll never achieve it. So that's always kind of a downer, because you're never going to get there. So don't expect it of yourself or others, and be realistic. And if you need help, ask directions. And it's not just you guys. In fact, my husband and I are very paradoxical on that. He will always ask directions, and I will never. And I will waste so much time in the grocery store just knowing I'm going to find something on an aisle eventually where I could have asked and saved myself 20 minutes. So, okay, but watch what you're thinking. Remember to think more positively. Put things in an optimistic light. Get rid of the negatives. The glass is half full. And get good at problem solving so that you avoid procrastination. Procrastination is a really hard thing on your body, because it just kind of keeps dinging you with stress because there's that list of things to do that you're not getting to. So when you complete small tasks, it really gives you a sense of self-control. And again, managing feelings in anger management, they talk about taking a break, take a walk, actually put your mind somewhere else. And when you are dealing with situations that make you angry, try to be positive and more constructive. And you can do some of the relaxation and breathing techniques that we'll talk some about. Prepare for it the next time when you know it's going to happen. And the other thing I want to point out is managing helplessness, because that's also, just like anger, a real trigger for constant stress. when you aren't in a position to really be in control. But you can be assertive in a positive fashion and not end up bottling it all up and waiting for it to explode at another time. And just briefly, the ABCs of emotions are talking about how we're affected by our beliefs. We have an activating event, and then what we believe, which may be something we perceive completely different from somebody else. We think reality is a nice, solid black and white issue, but it's not. You know, you could ask something of this entire room and would have probably about 70 different belief systems that actually would experience something entirely different. And then we have the emotional consequences. So what you need to do is be good at talking to yourself about positive outcome. Instead of saying, gosh, there is so much to do, you just say, what is it that I have to do? I choose to do it. I look forward to doing it. You know, keep a positive attitude. All right, now, relaxation response. This is our body's anecdote. It's what it wants to do to get rid of the stress. And we can assist it. We've learned we're trying to manage our stress, our time, our attitudes. Now let's try to figure out ways to de-stress. And I tell you, one of the most important things is you leave that time for yourself and you do something pleasurable. And the list is long. You know, I couldn't even begin. I mean, pets. Actually, you can reduce blood pressure by having pets. Gardening. In my dementia lecture, there was a 30% reduction in dementia in women who gardened. And then hobbies, you know, whatever your hobby is, painting, music. In fact, I've got a list. There are so many things. There's let's see, the page on it's the 6 on the very right below the last slides. Strategies to reduce stress physically and mentally. Nap. I like nap. Poetry, play games, swim, watch a funny movie. Don't forget about laughter. Laughter is a huge stress reduction, actually helps with healing. And then other relaxation techniques that we've known about for a while are breathing techniques, meditation, prayer, and then some that are favorites of mine, water therapy, which is going and just soaking. You can use essential oils. That lavender we talked about is a soothing oil. And there's actually one kind of lavender, it turns out, that's better than others, and it's called lavender burnetii. And I thought, B-U-R-N, as in burnout, E-T-I. The lavender burnetii is actually one of the lavender species that is most effective in helping with reducing stress. Other water therapies like saunas, I put Epsom salts there because it's magnesium sulfate. You get in a bathtub of that and that helps you relax. And then, of course, you know, active things like swimming, we said. Now, seeking out social support, I don't want you to underestimate social support because I don't think there's a single behavior that is not improved by having social support. When I've researched how to help people lose weight, social support is very important. When you research about how to help people quit cigarettes, social support is right up there. So when you're needing to work on reducing your stress, learning to manage your time and de-stress, you may find support. Now, both by actually doing activities. I go to a yoga class that's very supportive, and you know, you get to de-stress, you get to stretch and breathe and all those things. So don't forget your friends. And also one of my favorites is enjoy music and nature. You can help with de-stressing by just looking out at the greenery. And it changes your focus of whatever was going on, and the greenery helps you to de-stress. And music is very important for many of us, whether we're listening to it or we're participating in it. And the next thing we're going to talk about is sleep. Sleep really matters. When you're trying to heal your body and handle stress, sleep is critical. It's key. And unfortunately, about 1 out of 3 of us have some sort of sleep problems at some time. But if you have an ongoing sleep problem like sleep apnea, restless legs, you need to really get that taken care of. And some of the ways to help with managing sleep and not being stressed about it, is to practice sleep hygiene. And I don't know if y'all have heard the term sleep hygiene before. Essentially what it means is going to bed at the same time every night, not doing anything in your bed but sleeping, no TV, no reading, no eating in bed. That's sleep hygiene. Other things, of course, may be kind of obvious, like avoiding caffeine. Alcohol is not good for sleep. It changes your sleep cycle. And no stimulating movies, horror movies, or bad arguments before bed. That is just a recipe for disaster. And if you're still going over that to-do list in your brain for tomorrow at work, sit down, write it down before you go to bed. And also, make yourself a comfortable sleep environment. Temperature needs to be good. What you're sleeping on needs to be comfortable. And a lot of people are disturbed by smells, light, sounds. Get your sleep environment under control, because sleep really matters. Now, active physical relaxation. Talked a little bit about the stretching and yoga, exercise. Massage is kind of active, and in a way, at least it is for the massage person. But there's other ways to actually help your body physically relax. Guided imagery is a really good one. Something that you visualize, if you may not have lovely green trees to look out, but something else that you have experienced in the past that really helps you feel very quiet. That's guided imagery. And you can get tapes that do things like guided imagery, guided relaxation, and you can actually teach your muscles to relax. And made a little note about progressive relaxation practice. That's something that actually takes some work, but it's very effective, where you work on your entire body. Usually you can do it best in position where you're lying down and you don't have to support any parts of your body. But if you tend to fall asleep, you may have to sit up to do it. But you work through each part of your body. You start with your toes and you tell them to relax. You envision them being warm and soft, whatever is the trigger for you concentrating on that body part to just release the tension. And you work up, and you'll know that there's certain parts of your body that may have the most tension, like the small of your back, and you may have to kind of concentrate on it. If it's feeling really stiff, you can get to the point where you undo that stiffness. It's an ancient practice, and it truly does take practice, but you start from stem to stern. You can go back to those muscle groups that are really the tight ones and keep working on telling them to relax, because our mind and our body are very connected. And if you have problems with intruding thoughts, like that list of things to do keeps bugging you, very often, well, one source I read, this fella, he says, sometimes I just tell people to yell, "Stop!" when your brain is just, taking a detour. You were relaxing the small of your back and it was going well, and then all of a sudden you remembered that appointment you had, that, oh my gosh, I've got to go vacuum or whatever. Just stop. But a technique that's much quieter, won't frighten those around you, is just take a really deep breath, and that helps you to kind of recenter back on the body, because you're trying to concentrate between you and the body. You're not thinking about other things. This is a very effective technique to help you relax. Biofeedback. How many of you guys have tried biofeedback? We do that here at the center. There's tapes available, all kinds of techniques for biofeedback where you are, it helps to train you to get in touch with your body. Because very often our minds are so busy we forget that we actually control our body processes. And biofeedback will use things like helping you make a temperature change. They'll have a temperature probe or a change like a galvanic response, muscle tension. They have little electrodes that you can see if your muscles are relaxing. So there's lots of biofeedback techniques that are very helpful, help you get in communication with telling your body to relax. And then good old breathing exercises. We even have a little card that we laminated and gave to all our staff to practice breathing techniques. And we probably all are feeling stressed right now, so let's all just sit up straight in our chairs, because you have to pull your abdomen and your diaphragm apart because you want to deep breathe. Relax your hands either in front of you or on the table. Now, and close your eyes. Promise nothing's going to happen. Okay, now take a long, slow breath for 6 counts. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6. Now hold it. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi. Now very slowly, over 6 seconds, release it. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi. Okay, open your eyes. Now do that 4 times a day, repetitively. You know, when you're in a stressful situation, just take the opportunity to do some deep breathing. And some other techniques are actually cueing with your deep breathing. If you're, like you're doing your relaxation technique on the floor, or you're just stopping to do some 5 times a day deep breathing, you can use cue words. You know, in with whatever it is, peace or happiness or contentment, and out with stress and worry. So breathe in those good feelings and then let those bad ones go out with the breath. That's a very good technique too. All right, now, of course, one of my favorite topics is always nutrition. So be careful, you know, what goes in your mouth. You want to avoid excess alcohol because that actually can overdo the stress reaction. So can excess caffeine and sugar, because sugar can kind of simulate what the overproduction of cortisol is doing with overstimulation of insulin, fat mobilization, increased appetite, obesity. So eat foods that are low on the glycemic load index, so they don't mess with your blood sugar. And drink lots of water. We've got something going on right now where we're drinking 2 quarts of water a day among the staff. And you think, oh, 2 quarts. Well, truly, it's not that much. And that's just kind of a minimum. Hot weather, I'd say you might want to double that. But very important for moving your nutrients into the cell and getting rid of your toxins. Eat regularly. You want to avoid hypoglycemia. You put the body under stress when you expect it to go without fuel and nutrients. And think about eating for the long term. You want to eat whole, nutritious foods 80% of the time. But really, this is stress reduction. You're allowed to not be perfect, and that's important. If you can do whole foods 80% of the time, that gives you lots of leeway for other occasions. And plan ahead. When you're wanting to really prepare and have nutritious foods on hand, that keeps you from having munchie attacks where you have junk food on hand and, you know, the insulin and blood sugar go out the window. So healing whole foods are things that have like your omega-3 fatty acids, which are very important for the brain. And you can get those in your fish that swim in cold water, like the salmon and the sardines. And they have eggs that are spiked now with omega-3 fatty acids. And flax and walnuts are a source of alpha-linolenic acid. and always consume fruits and vegetables. In lieu of anything else, eat your fruits whole, and colorful is good. Eat more beans and seeds and nuts. We kind of tend to forget about those. All of these have important nutrients that are helping. They have B vitamins, they have zinc, they have the fatty acids, proteins. All of these are important for helping your body handle stress. And go for freshness and variety when possible. Use traditional herbs and spices. There's a lot of those that are very helpful. And soothing teas. Chamomile we all know about because Peter Rabbit got to drink it when he got in Mr. McGregor's watering can and got a cold. But chamomile also has some very soothing properties, very soothing for digestion as well. And then the walnut tea. I don't know, have any of y'all had the walnut tea that Dr. Riordan served after his lecture on depression? Or any of y'all? Well, I'll tell you what. I had never had it before that. And what was interesting is, after the lecture, the restaurant prepared everybody a little walnut tea. And they drank their walnut tea, and then they just all sat there. Bliss. Bliss from the walnut. Okay, so all you have to do is you take an English walnut and put it in a teacup, pour boiling water over it, let it steep. You know, when the water gets drinkable and cool, drink that and eat the walnut. It's a great way to sort of chill out. Okay, gang, thanks, and remember to de-stress.
The preceding program was presented by the Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning International and the Bright Spot for Health Lunch and Lecture Series. To inquire about additional health-related information available on DVD, audio CD, VHS, or audio cassette, simply call 316-682-3100 or drop by 3100 North Hillside in Wichita, Kansas. To discover more about the center and what we have to offer, be sure and visit us on the web at www.brightspot.org.